Many gardeners keep repeating the same mistake with fruit trees in small spaces. They choose trees based on what they want to eat instead of how the plant actually behaves in a restricted root environment. The result shows up fast in containers. Trees grow aggressively for one season. Roots circle and suffocate, watering becomes unpredictable, fruit drops before maturity, and within 2 years the plant declines. Containers get blamed, but the real issue is poor species selection and management. Fruit trees absolutely can thrive in pots, patios, balconies, and compact backyard systems when the biology of the tree matches the reality of confined roots. I've tested these in raised beds, fabric grow bags, half drums, greenhouse corners, and alongside hydroponic setups where humidity and nutrient cycling constantly affect soil performance. When done correctly, small-space fruit growing often produces cleaner, more manageable harvests than traditional in-ground orchards. Figs consistently prove how productive container fruit growing can be. A fig tree naturally tolerates restricted roots and actually fruits more heavily when growth is slightly constrained. In open soil, figs push excessive vegetative growth. In containers between 40 and 60 liters, energy shifts toward fruit production instead of branch expansion. The soil structure determines success here. Dense compost-heavy mixes hold too much water and slowly suffocate roots. A reliable mix is roughly 40% compost, 40% coarse aeration material like cocoa chips or bark, and 20% mineral drainage such as sand or pumice. Water thoroughly until runoff appears, then allow the top layer to dry several centimeters before watering again. Managed this way, figs often produce multiple harvest cycles annually, even in tight urban growing spaces. Citrus trees perform exceptionally well in containers when feeding remains consistent. Many growers, unfortunately, fail because they treat citrus like seasonal plants instead of nutrient-demanding evergreen systems. Garden soil inside pots compacts quickly and eliminates oxygen flow around feeder roots. A dwarf lemon or lime settles comfortably into a 50-liter container when fertilized lightly but regularly. Instead of heavy monthly feeding, diluted liquid nutrients every 7 to 10 days really help stabilize growth and prevent flower drop. Flower loss is usually caused by nutrient swings rather than, say, pollination failure. With 6 to 8 hours of sunlight and steady feeding, container citrus becomes one of the most dependable producers available to small-space gardeners. Guava adapts remarkably well to confined environments and honestly deserves far more attention than it receives. The tree tolerates pruning, heat, and irregular conditions better than many popular fruits. Productivity depends heavily on early shaping. So, once a young guava reaches about 60 centimeters in height, cutting the central leader, it actually forces lateral branching. That early intervention prevents vertical dominance and creates a compact canopy, which is really well suited for pots. Since guava fruits on new growth, regular pruning directly increases harvest potential. In raised beds or large containers, guava quickly becomes one of the highest-yielding tropical fruit options for limited gardens. Pomegranate behaves almost perfectly in containers because of its naturally shrubby growth habit. It tolerates drought, handles pruning well, and interestingly, flowers more intensely when roots experience a bit of mild restriction. Rich soil often delays flowering. Slightly lean-growing media encourages reproductive growth instead of just foliage expansion. After structural growth establishes, reducing nitrogen inputs while increasing potassium supports heavier flowering and fruit set. Even containers around 35 liters can support productive plants, provided sunlight exposure remains strong and airflow prevents humidity buildup. Apple trees succeed in small spaces only when grown on dwarfing rootstocks. Pruning alone cannot compensate for genetically vigorous roots. Many container failures happen because growers unknowingly plant full-sized varieties that continuously outgrow available space. Dwarf apples thrive in deep containers or raised beds with at least 45 centimeters of soil depth. Moisture consistency becomes more important than heavy fertilization. Irregular watering commonly leads to fruit cracking and poor development. Container apples often experience fewer pest issues because inspection and intervention are easier at manageable heights. Peaches and nectarines respond extremely well to container cultivation when annual pruning becomes routine. These trees fruit on one-year-old wood, meaning controlled cutting improves productivity rather than reducing it. After harvest, removing roughly one-third of new seasonal growth maintains tree size and stimulates strong fruiting branches for the following year. Excellent drainage remains essential because persistent moisture invites fungal problems quickly. Elevating containers slightly off the ground improves airflow beneath pots and significantly reduces root stress. Bananas function exceptionally well in containers despite their size, provided nutrient demand is respected. Dwarf banana varieties adapt particularly well to confined systems. Large containers above 70 liters support stable growth when feeding remains frequent. Bananas consume nitrogen aggressively during active development. Pale foliage signals slowed growth long before visible decline occurs. In gardens positioned near hydroponic runoff or nutrient-rich irrigation zones, bananas often outperform expectations due to constant nutrient availability combined with warmth and moisture. Mulberries rarely receive much attention in container gardening discussions, yet they actually tolerate pruning better than nearly any other fruit tree. If you maintain them as compact shrubs instead of letting them grow into trees, it keeps the harvest accessible and encourages continuous production. Since mulberries fruit on new wood, pruning them twice yearly really stimulates fresh fruiting growth. A container-grown mulberry, when positioned along a fence line or perhaps at the edge of a greenhouse, can deliver extended harvest periods without taking up a large amount of ground space. Olive trees are, interestingly, naturally suited to containers because they're adapted to poor, mineral-heavy soils. In fact, excess care usually reduces their fruiting performance. If you use rich compost blends and water them too frequently, you'll just end up with lots of foliage instead of olives. A gritty soil mix with strong mineral content is best, allowing the soil to partially dry out between watering cycles. Mild stress, believe it or not, encourages flowering. Full sun exposure is absolutely essential. In compact gardens, olives can provide both ornamental structure and long-term productivity without demanding constant intervention. Avocado trees, I have to say, present more challenge, but they can still succeed when their limitations are respected. Standard varieties just grow far too large, but dwarf or semi-dwarf types adapt reasonably well to containers, provided you manage them carefully. Drainage, though, is what really determines survival. Avocado roots need oxygen constantly, and they decline quite quickly in saturated soil, so containers must remain elevated, making sure the drainage holes never clog against ground surfaces. Deep watering followed by full drainage is key to preventing root rot, which is honestly the most common cause of failure. With a bit of patience and stable conditions, container avocados can transition into productive, compact trees over time. Successful container fruit growing depends less on container size and more on management rhythm. Nutrients leach faster, soil temperatures fluctuate more rapidly, and moisture levels change quickly compared to in-ground systems. Observation consistently outperforms fixed watering schedules. Checking moisture several centimeters below the surface prevents chronic overwatering, which, honestly, causes more losses than drought in container systems. Trees actually prefer cycles of moisture and oxygen rather than constant saturation. Root pruning every 2 to 3 years keeps trees productive without endlessly increasing pot size. removing the plant, trimming roughly 20% of outer roots, and refreshing growing media restores vigor and maintains balance between canopy and root mass. Sunlight positioning also changes outcomes dramatically in small gardens. Walls, paving, and reflective surfaces increase accumulated heat, often improving sugar development in fruits like figs, citrus, and pomegranates. Containers allow adjustment throughout the season as light angles shift. Mobility becomes one of the greatest advantages of growing fruit trees in pots. Trees can be repositioned during storms, moved toward stronger seasonal light, or isolated when pest pressure appears. Instead of fighting environmental limitations, the grower adapts the environment itself. Small spaces reward precision. Controlled root zones, intentional feeding, strategic pruning, and smart placement transform limited areas into highly productive fruit systems. If practical, experience-driven growing methods like this help you harvest more food from less space, subscribe to Gardening Simplified and share this video with another gardener trying to grow seriously in a small area. Better results come from understanding how plants truly grow and applying that knowledge consistently, season after season.